Hello and welcome to Game and Gain. My name is Muzz and welcome to the spoiler edition of my review of Heretic. I'm going to be going into the finer details of the plot, so if you don't want to know, go away, watch the film, and then come back and we can talk about it together. So, if you saw my first video, that I enjoyed the film. It wasn't what I was expecting as a horror, but as a psychological thriller, I think it does a pretty good job. So, I'll try and go through the film, not scene by scene, but give a rough timeline of the events of the film and what I liked and what I disliked about it. So the first kind of 5 minutes really is like try to get to know Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes, and I thought I was like, this, you're not really getting much. Like, you get the idea that Sister Barnes is, she's not really a Mormon, or she's maybe haven't questioned her beliefs, whereas Sister Paxton is like a die-hard, would be considered a bit of a weirdo in terms of the way she devotes herself to her religion. So you get those kind of ideas early on in the film. They're doing the rounds, try to convert people to uh, Mormonism. Yeah, the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they're going around house to house, and Mr. Reed was on their call list. And this is where we get the lovely Hugh Grant, who comes in and he invites them in. They're like, oh, the key point is like that they need a woman to be in the house, being present. And so Mr. Reed's like, yep, she's making blueberry pie. It's all going great. So come in, have a seat, and they chat, and it doesn't, like, they actually do. I was like, this is it starting, it feels too early for them to be here, but I actually think the first third is probably the strongest part of the film, in my opinion, where they're having conversations about religion, where they're questioning each other on religion. It's Mr. Reed and Sister Baxton, Sister Barnes have really good back and forth about what, like, religion is, and like how it's iterations on different things. And Hugh Grant is, yeah, as I said in the last one, like, phenomenal in this kind of role of this. He's quite, he takes you in there, like, oh, he's quite nice, and then he's got that sinister undertones, and he clearly sees himself as superior, and he's almost like playing with the girls, like in certain aspects of the film. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So he takes them in. He gets them some Coke. Clearly, they don't want to drink it. So I don't know if something was in there. But he's got a candle. The candle is the scent of blueberry pie. Obviously, there's no blueberry pie being made. So he says to the girl, like, basically the door locks. It's on a deadbolt. He says he can't open it. They'll need to come through the back if they want to leave the house, which is obviously, not going to happen. And they keep asking to see his wife, and eventually Mr. Reed's like, right, you don't believe me. Surely you don't believe me with this wife nonsense. I clearly don't have someone here. Let's get that out of the way. And then he goes on this big rant about religion and compares it to Monopoly, of all things, which is actually quite a good analogy. And you do, like, as someone who, not to get all, I don't want to really dive, but I'm not religious, and I have some feelings on religion. And I was actually like, oh, I'm maybe agreeing with him in some of these points, which is quite weird to say. But Sister Barnes kind of fights back against this, and actually again makes some, I think, really good points, counter arguments, and eventually it gets to the point where they have two doors to choose from. Do they still believe in their religion, or do they choose disbelieve? It doesn't actually matter. That's the kind of scary thing. They both doors lead to the same thing, which is a basement, and they're trying to figure out what's happening. A board breaks off which has some nails in it that will come in later, and this Mr. Reed talks about, you're about to see a miracle. You're about to see a miracle, and the girls are like, what? What's going on? What's happening here? And at this point, kind of Sister Barnes is being portrayed as the one who's going to get out of this. Like, she's the one who's challenging him, whereas Sister Paxton is like in the background. She's more the sidekick. She's not really challenged him. She's almost given in to his demands in certain elements. Oh, going back, sorry, there was key points that I missed here. So they came here on bikes. Sister Barnes had the bike lock, but it was found when they get their jackets back in Sister Paxton's pocket. Key bit of information that I forgot that. So they're in the basement, and this old woman, like almost skeleton, like she's severely malnourished. She's scabbing. She's got all these different things wrong with her. Doesn't look in the best of shape. And Mr. Reed is like, this is the prophet. This is a prophet from God. She's going to die. She's going to eat the blueberry pie, which comes back into it, which is laced with wolfsbane, and she's going to die. So you're like, okay, because as someone who doesn't believe in religion, he's now saying that he keeps talking about the one true religion, and he's like, this. So for him to kind of be framing it in this way, you're going to see a miracle, is quite interesting. So she dies, and there's a good bit of kind of tension here. It's not fear, but there's a good bit of tension when she dies, where you're like, when is she going to wake up? They in the stairs. Oh, they are the two sisters. Priest, I don't know what manager, comes to the house to ask them. Asks Mr. Reed where they are. He said he's not seen them. He doesn't believe that. The bikes have been taken away, so you're like, okay, there must be someone else, potentially. Anyway, so they're on the stairs. He comes in. They've got matches. They realise Sister Paxton thinks that the body wasn't in the right position. So you're like, oh, she's come back to life maybe, and she's just moved. That'll come in key later. And yeah, Mr. Reed comes down and is talking to them both, and Sister Paxton was giving a knife earlier on in the film of Sister. I'm missing a lot of key points. I'm really not good at describing films. I should maybe improve this for next time. But Sister Barnes gives Sister Paxton a knife, and the key word to stab Mr. Reed is magic pants. And this is in reference to early on. There's a scene where Sister Paxton gets, we call it scantied, gets her trousers pulled down off of these teenagers who are saying, oh, do you wear magic pants? So magic pants. And just as Sister Barnes is about to say magic pants, because Mr. Reed has his back to Sister Paxton, she dies, like legitimately dies, like gets her neck cut with a carpet slicer. What do you call them? Oh, the term is just went out of my head. A blade, anyway, a bladed thing for carpets that you cut carpets with. I can't. The name is just gone. And you're like, oh, she was being. I thought she was going to be the main character and get out of it, but you're like, Mr. Reed's like, oh, don't worry, she's going to come back to life, and it keeps going on and keeps going on, and the prophet does actually end up coming back to life, and you're like, oh, so Sister Barnes must come back to life. But then he sees that she has an implant on her arm, which is obviously, it's a contraceptive, so it would be against the church that she's affiliated with. So they start having him and Paxton start having a conversation about that, And then you see a shift in Paxton becoming not the sidekick, but the main character, the one we're rooting for to get out of this. And it turns out that the whole prophet thing was a hoax. Turns out there was two women. The woman who ate the pie actually died, as we discover. Paxton goes into the basement and discovers her body. There's another woman there. And it turns out the whole thing has been a ruse to try and control Paxton into becoming Mr. Reed's wife, I believe, because the bike lock was placed in her pocket. He knew she would get to that point because of he was in control, and that's what he tells her is the one true religion. It is control. I am controlling you, so submit to me. They're in a room with cages of all different women who have clearly went through the same thing and have submitted their beliefs to Mr. Reed, and they are being kept in horrendous conditions, malnourished, freezing them as well to keep them alive, I guess. But Paxton rejects this, and it's done in a very good way, because magic pants was the word that was going to be used as a keyword to stab Mr. Reed. And Mr. Reed says this, and he gets the knife through the throat. So Mr. Reed is dying. Paxton runs back to the room with the lost prophet, and where Sister Barnes is, who is still dead, and she's looking for a way out. There's no way out, and she turns into Mr. Reed, who's dying, and she gets the blade in her stomach. So you're like, great. And Sister Paxton starts praying, and Mr. Reed doesn't like this, so he's going to kill her by stabbing her in the throat. And just as she's about to do this, Sister Barnes comes back to life, and that nail board from earlier on scalps it right across Mr. Reed's face, ultimately killing him. She then dies, and this is where the film is like, oh, you're like, was that a miracle? And you start to kind of question the idea of what the film was, because it's now saying that potentially there was a miracle in there. And that brings us to the end. Paxton escapes. Mr. Reed and Sister Barnes are dead, and she's out in the woods. So that's a whole plot summary. I hope there's bits I'll have left out, definitely, but the first third, best part of the film, where the characters are engaging. The second part, the middle third, where they're going through the lost prophet. Is that what they call it? I think it's just the prophet. They call it her, the woman who dies. That bit, there's some good tension in there, but it just doesn't go enough. Like, the prophets aren't intimidating, so you're like, nothing's going to happen to the characters if they did come back and start attacking them. So you're like, and then Mr. Reed himself, probably his biggest downfall, as good a character is he's just not that intimidating. Like, he's not scary, and that's where the weakest part, I think, is the final third with the chase and the twist, the two twists where you think the main character is going to be Sister Barnes and she gets killed. I actually really like that from films. I like subverting the expectations of the audience, where you think, now you're like, Paxton's our character. What, we've got to root to her for it, and she actually becomes a very sympathetic character because she's going through this. But then for her, Barnes to come back at the end, back to life for this miracle, there's some nice details like that where something's been said or something's been shown and it's been acknowledged in the film, and then they actually bring it back to the key being the jacket, the body being in a different part, which it was because the woman who got switched the bodies, didn't get in the right position. So I liked the elements of that, and yeah, overall it is a good film. I would recommend it. I'm going to probably get it on Blu-ray just to watch it again, because I do think the performance from Hugh Grant alone is worth going to see. That first third is really good. It builds up the characters so well, it builds up the tension, builds up the atmosphere. It just dips a little in the middle with the prophets and the lack of real kind of threats. And I know that actually, the twist actually is good for that, I think. So maybe it comes up at that part, and then the final kind of act is, yeah, it's not. It's the weakest part of the film. I'll say that it's the weakest part of the film. But yeah, that's the kind of my spoilers. I've spoiled it all, really. I think, maybe. There'll be parts that I missed out, but hopefully, if you have watched this, you have seen Heretic. Let me know what you think about it. Do you like it? Do you think how you as enamoured with Hugh Grant's performance as I am, or do you think it was just all right? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. And with all that said, all that's left to say is any thoughts, comments, general hostile remarks, leave them below. Thank you very much. Bye bye.